Hello again, Peter.
Hello.
And this time I'd like to talk to you about basically human beings. Where did we come from? It's a tough question.
Which story do you want there?
Yeah.
Well, it depends which angle you want. You know,
Well, basically, like,
evolution
for instance, you said the first human-like beings evolved on Sirius. Is
right,
that correct?
Yes. Basically, before there was human on Earth, there used to be 4 planets around the twin star of Sirius, and there were 4 root races: the Eagle people, the Shimmer beings, the Cat people, and the Crystal people.
And how do you know that?
It's from memory, basically, largely from ayahuasca vision, which then many other shamans also saw the same thing.
All right. Okay.
They actually believe the ayahuasca comes from, it was made by the Syrians and has been passed down to the Mir and Atlantis.
I thought ayahuasca was discovered in the Amazonian jungle just by
Shamans
accident.
always used it, and they've worked with it, and they all have these ancient visions too.
Okay. So these human-like beings on Sirius, can you describe them? I mean, you said they're beings of light.
No, at that time they were physical, because
Right.
you know there were actually planets around Sirius, which has since been absorbed into the star. But on the
Okay.
planets, various human-like beings evolved. With slight differences, of course, like the cat people, because they were cat-like, they were human bodies, but they had the ears and eyes of a cat. The eagle people had these big arms which were spread out, and they would actually learn to soar in the wind with them. The shimmer beings were like dolphin-like, very glistening skin who swim in the water, and of course the crystal people who work close to the crystals had very translucent skin, so you could almost see through them.
See, just when you mentioned the Shimmer people, is that like there's a Dogon tribe in Africa that's the kind of describe beings that are like dolphin-like?
That's right.
Did they visit there at one point in their history, and they've kept that memory?
A lot of the people there do actually worship Sirius, simply because that's their connection to our history.
Yeah, that's right, because they had discovered that they knew about the 2 moons or something around one of the planets
That's right.
before we discovered it.
Yes.
Okay.
But you see, a lot of old cultures always try and acknowledge the older races, all the ancestors and so on, the first people who were there. That's very important in a lot of these old cultures. And therefore they would acknowledge the Syrians as the basic roots of the human races.
So the Shimmer people came down to Earth then? The Shining Ones, was that it was called the Shining
What's happened is
Ones?
that as they're getting towards the end of the Syrian cultures, as the planets would be absorbed to the sun, and many had evolved into beings of light, and they decide to come to Earth to actually help it evolve, to actually blend with the human race.
So this is going into our evolutions. I'd like to know which point did they enter human evolution? Did you think humans evolved from apes first of all?
Yes.
And was that done through, like, I know, like for instance, Ten McKenna, he puts the fact that these human creatures ate magic mushrooms, and that enabled us to discover language and also get colour in our sight. Do you think that was a step in our evolution?
Many plants helped our evolution.
Okay, because we've always been in contact with
Exactly.
plants, yeah.
But it was about 90,000 years ago when the Syrians came down and they began Lemuria.
So what stage were we at? Were we like Homo sapiens?
That was about Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon.
Neanderthal. And there's lots of stories of the gods interbreeding with the daughters of man, and
That's what happened, is that they weren't physical, because they came down as beings of light and actually blended with the human race, put their energy into them, to actually make them evolve into a new state. This is why you suddenly have Cro-Magnon man appearing, which seems to have no relation to what was before.
so you have the missing link. They were the ones that were responsible from the jump from the one before
that's
to the upright one.
Yes.
And they done that just by putting their energy in.
Yeah, blending with them.
Okay. So do you think it wasn't done in a test tube then, like, you know, people say it's like cloning, or
No.
it wasn't done scientifically like that?
No,
it was done spiritually.
No, but they did. Some of them did become physical, and they actually created Lemuria as a magical land where people could then train in magic.
So what was Lemuria like? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It was basically one landmass in the middle of the ocean, but it was very magical. People there would learn magic.
Because these beings have learned magic on Sirius, and they're masters
They
on
came
it,
down,
and they
that's
came
right.
down to teach humans magic.
Yes.
So it was like a human culture. Were the gods living with us at this time? Would we call them the gods?
Well, they were
Do you know?
shining ones, so known as then.
Right. So they were living amongst us at the same time
That's
as
right.
changing us physically.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us? Do you know anything about? David Icke goes on about the reptilians. Do you know how do they fit in there? Do they exist first of all? And
On the astral, yes, because they're thought forms.
okay.
Remember, the astral is very fluid. Anything you imagine up is going to be there. And it's very important to be responsible for what you're creating here. See, what they actually are the elementals of genetic engineering. You see, the serpent people from Sirius were masters of problem with genetic manipulation, then you have to evolve things with spirit. So therefore they become the kind of basic image that seems to be behind the whole idea of genetic engineering. So the elementals people form when they start manipulating foods and things, the elemental of that energy takes reptilian form. However, they're not the same as Syrians, who are actually really good at what they're doing, and the kind of modern genetic engineering is quite a corrupt thing, and it's quite dangerous, and so the elementals of this are quite nasty things. Now, if you're tuning with them, they come into your life. That's where the astrals like what you attune to is growing. It is not good for people to think on these things then, because you're feeding them all the time. So if you want to keep away from reptilians, simply keep away from GMOs, because they're simply the elementals of that art of genetic manipulation.
So, do you think that David Icke then was specifically, his purpose is to get people on board with this conspiracy stuff, to pretend he's revealing stuff and then scare them with this reptilian stuff? I think that was like a plan, an agenda.
Well, a lot of it is to do with making money, and when he was a TV presenter, he knows how to pull in the crowds and get a lot of money out of it. But that can be a dangerous thing. Somebody focuses on these things and makes it more real. I knew a lot of people in the early days reading his books and actually getting quite ill because of the stuff they're focusing on. When it had to do healing and it had to clear up all these thought forms of reptilians that they've been manifesting.
And is there any connection? He would talk about the royal family and the Rothschilds and stuff having this reptilian form. Was that pure fantasy, or do you think that because they are working with it?
No, it's nothing to do with the reptilian races. I said because the reptilians of Sirius were the evolved race.
Right.
What's
With this energy,
now,
I mean.
What's happening now is we all have a reptilian part of our brain, the most instinctive part. And obviously, if you go and place like the supermarket where everybody's in their feeding frenzy, that's what you see manifesting. You know, it's not if they suddenly become reptilians because they're in the supermarket and they're not with the rest of the time. It's like that's the part that's manifesting at the time. We all reptilian in a way.
Okay, so they're just that energy, and some psychic people can pick up on that.
We all have that energy.
And that's the people that have told them I've seen a reptilian just because they were more attuned at that particular time through maybe taking too much drugs or something like that has allowed them to see that.
Yes.
So after, what happened to Lemuria then, getting back to that?
It left.
What do you mean it left?
Basically they came to Earth, the Syrians bought their magic. Now they then actually vanished into the fairy realm because the fairies are far more open to magic than the humans were. So they actually changed dimension as it were. So they came to Earth for a while, taught the magic and then left. So Lemuria vanished. Okay.
When you see the fairy realm, I get a picture of something at the end of the garden floating around a couple of plants. You know,
nothing like that.
So what's a fairy realm?
It's a parallel dimension that shares the Earth with us. It's simply a different dimension, so we don't see them, they don't see us. They're much more human-like and about the same size as us, but they're shapeshifters, but they work very closely with nature, and they're magicians. Whereas we develop technology, they develop magic, so it's a different line of evolution.
I've heard some of the people in the course say that the fairies hate human beings.
Well, some do, because people are destroying nature, and when you do that, it affects their world too. Nature is shared.
So this world that we inhabit, with all the beautiful nature, if we say we build a huge factory, does that affect the fairy realm? And
yes, by destroying nature, it's actually destroying some of their world too.
So all the concrete roads and everything like that, they're very deeply unhappy about that,
yes.
And they want human beings to go back to a more natural world.
Yeah.
Do you think that's good for our evolution, not using concrete and building these big buildings?
Well, we need to be in harmony with the Earth to really understand how to evolve and be happy, because the Earth is so alive, it has so many gifts to give us. And when you then ignore its gifts and do everything artificially, there's a lot of waste there.
So basically cities are like a cancer then? We need to kind of develop cultures and communities within nature all around us.
Yes, we need to carry on learning how to live in harmony with nature.
So then, how did Atlantis pop up? Did that come directly after Lemuria?
In a way, yes. You see what happens when humans are left to play with their own magic. They created Atlantis, which is where they made mistakes and everything went wrong.
Okay.
It's simply a way of humans finding their feet with their own magic.
And how long did Atlantis last for?
Well, it's happened more than once. It's happened, destroyed probably 3 times so far. It rose again. Last time it vanished was 12,000 years ago. Before that was about 26,000 years ago. So since Lemuria, human beings have created Atlantis, and you still call it Atlantis each civilization. Probably wasn't what it called then, but that's the name we have for those civilizations.
Okay.
But basically, humans found the magic, made mistakes, destroyed it, started again.
And you've talked to me about bifurcation, where you think right now the world is going to split in two, where people working with magic are going to go to one evolution, and people kind of trapped in the system and negative thought forms are going to go the way of the police state and Brave New World type scenario. Does that mean that Atlantis failed in the past and we're in that evolution of it, and
That's
the good
right.
evolution actually...
That exists in another dimension, parallel to ours.
So, if this bifurcation, the people in it transcend this reality, will they go back to a previous Atlantis?
Possibly. I mean, I have the idea they probably will. All I know is that bifurcation is happening as it happened before. I do believe that because I feel them getting closer, that we could meet them again.
Okay.
Because the Atlanteans who were on the positive side are still there to help us now.
So we can tune into those energies if we want. And basically we'll go into the ones that do evolve will go into a magical realm, and we'll get trained in magic.
Yes. But also I think once we're blending with them, if we make it, they'll be teaching us a much better way of life. They would have already done it, so we can actually fit into their society and kind of evolve with them.
So we have to be open to that to get there.
You need to be open to actually making a better world, living in harmony with nature and working in magic and being responsible.
And one thing I'd like to ask you about is, I mentioned earlier, like, did the gods mess with our DNA? And you said they didn't, but what is our junk DNA for?
Well, it's not junk. It's simply
it's called that, you know, that label, yeah.
Well, DNA is affecting so much of us, and just because the scientists don't know what it does doesn't mean it's junk.
Yeah.
It's simply the part the scientists don't know yet.
Okay.
Which just shows how little scientists know, doesn't it?
Yeah. So what would you suggest that it's for, the rest of our DNA that we don't know?
Well, basically it is the blueprint on which our future is built. It has within it not just what we are now, but what we're becoming.
So it's basically, maybe we have to raise a certain state of consciousness to unlock a key in it, to use that more power in our DNA.
It's the potential, but also it's shaped by the soul. Okay. And this is something science doesn't pick up. They think it's just going to be for your parents, but when you notice that when you're born, your DNA changes. It's not just like your parents anymore. The soul actually changes the DNA.
Okay.
Therefore the soul is what shapes it.
So can we develop our soul at all? Is that just part of personal growth? I thought a soul was a soul and that's it, you know?
It is, but even the soul becomes more.
Right. So one other thing I talked to you about, I want to just ask you about, was the use of hemp. It was quite widespread in the past.
Oh, yes.
Like, for instance, the founding fathers demanded that farmers grew hemp because it was so useful in America.
That's right.
Why then is marijuana illegal?
Well, first of all, it was such a
name.
useful plant. When it was hemp, it was useful plant. They used rope out of it, cloth. It would create fuel, it would create plastics that were biodegradable and very efficient. And it would grow so efficiently that any culture that grew hemp was assured of wealth.
Simple as that?
Yes, and of course the Illuminati didn't like that, they lose control. So they invented this drug called marijuana. Nobody knew that it was the same as hemp at that time. Created all these films out to frighten people, and somebody said, until people asked them to do something about it. So when they banned the hemp, they didn't know at that time that was what the marijuana was, and suddenly the hemp was gone. And they couldn't do anything about it because they said, well, you've asked for this.
So the founding fathers were supposedly, some people say they were Freemasons. Now, why would they Freemasons get linked with the Illuminati? Do you understand what I'm getting at? So why did they say grow marijuana? Because they want to establish the country first to grow
Yes,
hemp.
but also Freemasonry is a name you give to many things. Any kind of, all these organisations tend to be called Masonic. They're not necessarily the same.
Okay.
You could say the Illuminati are a Masonic lodge themselves, but it's not quite the same as the Masonic lodges you might find in town, which is people quite harmless, just doing their own thing, doing their own kind of.
People say that that's the basic level, and the further up you go, these degrees of Freemasonics levels, then you get to the Illuminati.
There were different Masonic lodges, some which were rivals.
Okay.
It's like, for instance, the Jews that Hitler killed were simply in a different Masonic lodge, and they were rivals, and that's what that was all about.
So do you think the knowledge in Freemasonry, do you think that comes from like Egyptian mystery schools that's been handed down?
Much of that is lost to the Masons, and a lot of they make up to try and fill in the gaps.
Alright, so it's really just a story they're giving people.
There is the magic passed down in very carefully chosen lines when people show themselves worthy of initiation, and they're very careful that letting that get into wrong hands, because there is a pure magic there still, which they're not corrupted.
So basically, in summing up, the future is magic. We have to get in touch with
You need it.
ourselves.
Magic is what creates your reality, and everybody's doing it whether they know it or not. We all create your reality, so you might as well admit it and get on with it.
Yeah, time to embrace it.
Yes.
And grow and change the world for the better.
That's right.
Thanks again for your time, Peter. Have
You're
a nice
welcome.
day. Bye-bye.